In this section, you're going to learn how to solve equations that use multiplication and division. So previously, we've talked about when you have addition and subtraction. So the same thing holds true here, where you need to look at what's being done to your variable, and then you do the opposite of that to both sides of the equation. Okay, so I highly recommend having steps like what I have written here and make sure to look at them as you're learning this. So maybe even print out that process, right, that's written right here and have it to refer to as you're working through these problems or any other solving type problems that you're going to see. It's really the only way that we can train ourselves for our eyes to connect with our brain as to what we need to do. That repetition and making sure you're doing it correctly every time is critical to your long-term memory and your learning of this material. Okay, so to just go over it, the process of solving equations, the first step is to always fully simplify each side of the equal sign. Now, you won't always need to do that because you won't have things that can be combined, but you need to always look because that has to be the first thing that you do. And when you do that, you need to do your order of operations. Okay, now you fully simplify or combine like terms. That's another way that you can think about it. So combine like terms across the equal sign. Okay, either of those, you can think of it that way. All right, and then you isolate the variable by using opposite functions. And in fact, and I'll show this to you as I do some examples, when you're working across the equal sign, everything is opposite from the function that you're using to the order of operations that you're using. So when you're simplifying, which is what we've talked about before, right, we do GEMDAS, grouping, exponents, multiplication, division, adding, and subtracting. When you're solving, and again, that's when you start moving across the equal sign, it's just the opposite. You cancel addition and subtraction first, then multiplication and division, then exponents, and then your grouping. Now, when you simplify, you will sometimes end up getting rid of grouping symbols because in the process of simplifying, you'll do the distributive property, which gets rid of parentheses. So just kind of a heads up there, but you do need to be following the opposite of order of operations when solving. Okay, and then we have to use the substitution, right, to check your answer. So isolate the variable by using opposite functions. That's as you're working across the equal sign, and then use substitution to check. All right, so for A, we have a number sitting right next to a variable. That always means multiplication. Always, always. Okay. So the opposite of multiplication is division. Now remember, when we talked about division, I said that we're no longer going to be using the division sign, but instead we're going to write division as fractions. And this is why we do it. So instead of showing a division sign, I'm going to show my fraction line and show that I'm dividing 2x by 2. If I divide the left-hand side by 2, I have to divide the right-hand side by 2. Well, 2 divided by 2 is 1, so I get 1x equals 12 divided by 2, which is 6. Well, as soon as I have a 1 in front of that variable, it's the same as, that's 1 times x, right, which equals x. So I get x equals 6. So you don't have to show this step. You could directly go to just showing the variable, but I want to make sure that you're clear when you're dividing or multiplying, you have to be getting things equal to 1. So that's basically the equivalent of 0 when adding and subtracting. It's the identity property. Okay, so my answer is 6. So let's go and check. So I get 2x equals 12. That's just the original problem. I'll rewrite it with parentheses in place of the variable. And now I substitute 6 in, and I get 12 equals 12. And that is confirmation that my answer is correct. Okay, so remember that the first thing that you always have to do, I'll scroll back up here for a second. Number one, fully simplify each side of the equal sign. Well, I notice in 1b that there are like terms on the left-hand side. So that means I have to combine those first, and then I move across the equal sign. So I get 15b minus 12b. So remember, pay attention to those coefficients. And I get 3b. It's just a pile of 15 b's, right? And you're taking 12 b's out. How many b's do you have left? And I have that equals 9. 3 sitting next to the b means multiplication. So to cancel multiplication, I have to divide, right? So I'm dividing multiply by 3 to cancel it. And whatever I do to one side, I do to the other. So that goes away, and I get b equals 3. All right, and then again, I'm going to go ahead and input, or I'm rewriting just the basic equation, equals 9. Now, I personally would do my simplifying. So I would do the 15b minus 12b and then substitute the 3 in. But I think I'll actually show you both ways, and then you can decide. And sometimes you may do it one way, right, and do it the other way on other times, just depending upon what the problem is. So if I simplify first, I get my 3b equals 9. 3, replace the b with parentheses. And now I put the 3 in, and I get 9 equals 9. Now, what if I said, well, I don't want to combine first? That's okay. Instead, it would be 15 parentheses minus 12 parentheses equals 9. Now I substitute 3 in, right? Substitute 3 in. And now I simplify. So I'm following order of operations, which once again, I'm going to write in here, right? So now I have 45 minus 36 equals 9, and 9 equals 9. So the order that you do those doesn't matter, okay? All right, go ahead and pause the video, and I would actually encourage you to try the next 3 equations, and then go ahead and turn the video back on and watch me go ahead and go through them and check them. So this is a good time to test and see what you're understanding and what you might have questions on. Okay, so here I just have something on the right-hand side that I need to get simplified first. So I have 4x equals 4. I'm multiplying the x by 4. So to get rid of that, I need to divide by 4. Divide by 4. 4 divided by 4, making up my own words here, is 1, right? So that has canceled. So I'm left with x equals 1. All right, so now my check for x equals 16 minus 12. 4, replace the x with parentheses. This is great practice for evaluating. So anytime you need to substitute something, always do the process of taking your variable out and replacing it with parentheses, because that way you don't even have to think about it. It just becomes part of your process. There are some strategies that I talk about where you can get away with not using them sometimes, but then if you don't, other times you're going to get things wrong. So it's better to just use them all the time. And that's what I try to model whenever I'm showing how to do these math problems, or really any of these math problems. Okay, so I'm going to combine the right-hand side, which is 4. I substitute my 1 in, and I get 4 equals 4. Now, anytime you try something, and then you go back and watch the video, if you have a mistake, it is absolutely fine and expected when you're learning. So what you'll want to do is go back and rewrite the original problem on a clean sheet of paper and go and try the problem again. If you get stuck, you turn the video on and watch it again and use the steps to get through it. You repeat that for the same problem until you can do the problem without checking. And then you move to another problem that's similar and you follow that same process. Sometimes you may need to just do a problem once, other times it could be 10 times. There's no limit. It's just however many you need to get comfortable with a problem. Because if you're practicing it correctly, you will notice that future problems will be easier. Easier and more quickly. You're more quickly able to pick up the process and kind of see what your steps are going to be. All right, so for D, I need to combine my like terms. No, I don't. I need to simplify, which in this case, if I had addition or subtraction, it would be combining like terms, but it's just multiplication. So I have 2 times 10z, which is 20z, equals negative 60. Now that's multiplying the z by 20, so I have to divide by 20 to get it by itself. Do that to the other side. And z equals, so I'm going to show you a little trick. The number of zeros that you have on the end of your numbers, if you have, in this case, we have a 0 on both the numerator and the denominator, you can just cross those off. Basically multiplying everything by 10, which means you're dividing, right, by 10. So those cancel. And now I have negative 6 divided by 2. Well, negative divided by a positive is a negative. So I get negative 3. Z equals negative 3. And so now I'll go ahead and do my checking. 10z equals negative 60. I think this one, I'm inclined to go ahead and combine these and get my 20 and then put my parentheses. And then I'll go ahead and put my answer in, which is negative 3. And sure enough, I get negative 60 equals negative 60. All right, and then the last one. So this one has like terms with subtraction, so I can go ahead and simplify, or I have to go ahead and simplify the left-hand side. So 3x minus 4x, well, that means I have a negative, and it's negative 1, negative 1, there we go, x equals 8. Now I divide by negative 1, divide by negative 1, and x equals negative 8. And then my check, so 3x minus 4x equals 8. I'll go ahead and do my simplifying on the left. So I get negative 1 parentheses, right, because I'm basically replacing the x, right, with parentheses, and then equals 8. My answer is negative 8, so 8 equals 8. And again, we've confirmed that our answer is correct.